Well, hello, Pod family, and thank you for clicking play on this week's edition of The 10 List. This week, we have Ayla Chase back on the pod, and we dug deep into her story on episode 4. She's an Army officer, rock climber, ice climber, ultramarathoner, triathlete, EMT, all-around badass, whom Zach calls the most interesting woman in the world, probably much to his wife's chagrin. Ayla comes to us with 10 bullets loaded into an oversized revolver of experience and unleashes a firestorm of wisdom. Her topic? The 10 ways to connect with yourself and with others in the world. So let's get down to it. 2, 1, contact. The mics are plugged in and hot, and we are ready to roll. Ayla Chase, how are you?
I'm excellent, thank you.
I'm so happy to have you back and happy that you came with your 10 bullet points for the 10 list here this week. So you have 10 ways to connect with yourself and others in the world, correct?
Yeah.
Let's go. What's your number 1?
All right, so first disclaimer, they're not in any particular order of precedence, just kind of what came to mind. So it'll make it great or terrible. We'll just kind of see.
Right.
The first one, I have understand, respect, and appreciate yourself. I like the whole principle of that as we are, where we are, like it's such a astronomical anomaly. Just like the statistical probability of us being the way that we are is unbelievable. So for everything you think is a flaw or anything that you think is great about yourself, just kind of like appreciate it. Just appreciate who you are and that you're unique. And I think that's the core of everything. Yeah.
There's some figure that says that the chances of you being on planet Earth being you are like 1 in a trillion. And
right.
yeah, so appreciate yourself, understand, respect. That's actually 3. So if we break it down, understand yourself. How does somebody begin to understand themselves? What are some of the best ways that somebody can understand themselves?
For me, it's been through ultrathon running mostly, just because you reach such a low that you have to such a high and a low. I'll say that you really dig into what's important to you. Plus, when you have anywhere from 6 to 24 hours of moving by yourself in the woods or whatnot, like you have a lot of time to think about what you believe the meaning of life is or what's important to you. And so for me, that's been a huge headstone in me figuring out like who I am.
So would you say that really leaning into what's hard, leaning into suffering is a good way to really understand yourself?
I think it's worked for me. I don't know how many people would appreciate the concept of suffering. But yeah, leaning ahead is definitely stepping outside of your boundaries.
Like
you said,
not enough people appreciate suffering.
Yeah.
That's why I've been married for as long as I have.
Say that again, Zach. Why have you been married for as long as you have?
Just because I appreciate suffering. Like I keep a picture of my wife in my wallet, so like I know I've survived 10 years with this psychopath. I can make it through anything.
That's a beautiful woman you're talking about.
I'm just kidding. My wife is my best friend, actually. So she suffers like on my behalf. Like she will try to take it from me. Like I could break my leg and she would limp for a week to make me feel better.
So I wear a bracelet, and I actually had this made because I'm a geek, and it says pain plus perseverance equals strength. So that kind of goes along with the whole concept of the suffering and learning how to understand yourself. Yeah, I wear that. So like when I'm doing pull-ups, push-ups, I have it right next to another bracelet that's got my son's name on it. And those are the 2 things that I strive for, the pain, the perseverance, and the strength. And I'm doing it for my son. So yeah, doing those things, getting high and lows, really understanding yourself. So when we talk about respecting and appreciating yourself, what do you think some ways that a person who maybe doesn't respect themselves, doesn't appreciate themselves, how can we get them to the point of self-respect and self-appreciation?
Oh, that's a great question.
Zach, I don't think she's going to like me. I asked her the hard shit.
No, it's good. It's making me really think. I'm trying to put myself in a different perspective. For
Well, it's funny because you're
Yeah.
looking. You asked the question, and she's got this look on her face that's somewhere between like extreme pondering and also confusion. Because she's like, "But I already do this shit. It's not my problem. Like, get your weak ass." Like, no, I'm just kidding. But even so, I can imagine the internal struggle that she's having at the moment because these are just like she's just got it figured out, and I think it comes natural to her. It's like if you ask Michael Jordan, like, how did you just dunk from the 3-point line? He's like, I was on the ground and I wasn't. You know what I mean? That's all I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to be like too sarcastic here,
I'm
but
not
it's
a
just,
wuss.
she just like there are just some people that just like that it's a natural act for her. So for me to kind of see the wheels turn in her head, it's like, you know what I mean? You wouldn't ask like, hey, Babe Ruth, how'd you hit all them home runs? And he's just like, I swing that bat, son. I don't know.
Son. Okay,
No, I mean, it's a great question, and I think there's so many ways to approach like what you could tell someone in terms of trying to find that self-appreciation. I mean, some people recommend writing in a diary or like cataloging what you think you're good at, or people who just have a phenomenal support system. So, I don't know that I can answer anyone.
Okay, fantastic. I think that's some good options for people. So what's number 2?
Fail. It's in bold. It just says fail. And I love this because if you've never failed, you've never tried. To put it simply, it's inevitable. I think it should be pursued. I think you should push yourself beyond the limits that you know and understand that failure, and I say this a million times, but failure, like success, is self-defined. I mean, what makes failure different from success is nothing other than the perception that I have about it and what I take away from it. So I think it's important to kind of get around that stigma that we have towards failure and just learn to put yourself out there. And I like using kind of the example of Abraham Lincoln, just in that he failed being, if you will put it that way, he failed to get into the Senate twice. He failed the vice presidency. And then when he finally became president, the country split in two. You know what I mean? Like,
Miami got shot.
like, yeah, okay, you're right. I don't know.
I don't know if that's a failure,
that.
but the guy had a tough go.
But the takeaway outside of the being shot was that, he did become president. He continued driving on. Everyone knows about Michael Jordan not getting made on the basketball team. Everyone knows Oprah Winfrey didn't have a job. Like, those are the things that come on memes all over the place. But it's all to say, like, failure is amazing if you allow it to be.
I was just listening to today podcast with Dr. Phil. Actually has a podcast now, which is pretty good. He was on Rogan this past week. Incidentally, Rogan had 3 awesome epic podcasts this week. He had Dr. Phil, he had Alex Jones, which was absolutely epic. Like, it was almost a 5-hour podcast. And then he had David Lee Roth. So the trio of those podcasts, amazing week. Anyway, but Dr. Phil was on there. So I learned Dr. Phil had a podcast. So I went to go check out his, and he had a podcast with Steve Harvey. And when you started talking about failure and listing some of these people who failed, man, Steve Harvey, very, very vulnerable with his failures and just able to look back on them and tell you, okay, I failed, but this is what I learned. So yeah, absolutely fail and fail forward. I really like what you said. Failure, like success, is self-defined. That's awesome.
Well, you think about like Dr. Phil and Steve Harvey, and that's a lot of success in one room. And I think, all the most successful people have a great mustache. Dr. Phil, Steve Harvey, Oprah Winfrey, great mustache. Sorry, I just couldn't resist that Oprah joke. I had to get it out there.
All right, Ayla, what's number 3?
All right, number 3 is be curious. Just go out there and experience it. Some people, a lot of my buddies, they're like, what if I'm not good at it? Or what if I suck? Or what if people make fun of me, this, that, and the other, right? And is in the back of my mind, maybe. I mean, but at the end of the day, like, to put it softly, we mean nothing. And I don't mean that in a cold, hardened, like, sad way. I mean it in, like, however great or terrible we are, I mean, it's a particle in the wind. We're less than a blink of an eye, in terms of humanity. So go for it. Just, be curious, learn about why things work and this, that, and the other. And
that's awesome. And that brings me back to, I read a book once about, I think it was called like Think Like Da Vinci. And, Da Vinci is one of the most well-rounded Renaissance men ever. I mean, probably one of the most intelligent men to ever exist on planet Earth. And one of his biggest pieces of advice to other people is be curious, exactly what you just said. So that takes me right back to Da Vinci. That's really cool. And yeah, don't care if you might not be good at something. You will never be good at something if you don't start.
Exactly.
So get up and go do. All right. Awesome. So what's number 4?
All right. Number 4, I don't have one single word for it. It's just everyone has a story. So this is part of connecting to the rest of the world. We've kind of digressed past ourselves. The reality is that we don't know what's going on in anyone else's life. The guy who cuts you off in traffic, maybe he's speeding to the hospital. The jerk who closed the door behind you, you have no idea what anyone else is dealing with. There's a overused quote that's everyone's fighting a battle you know nothing about, but I believe that that's so true. So instead of allowing that to dictate your mood or create your reaction, just try to kill him with kindness, like to put it gently. Just, you never know what's going on in someone else's world, and all you can do, you can't control anything but how you decide to react to it. So
that's very true. And I'd like to add, approach every conflict with questions. And that's kind of a leadership kind of thing that either you learn as a leader or you don't. And if you don't, you pretty much fail at conflict. So when you perceive something as wrong, you have to step out of your own framework of your mind, of your perception of why it's wrong, because, everyone's perception is their own personal reality. And yeah, you got to listen to their story. You got to figure out where they're coming from. And the only way to do that is with questions. And I think that's one of the reasons I enjoy podcasting, and I really enjoy, especially working with Zach, because it helps develop a part of my brain that otherwise might not be developed. I get to interview very interesting and inspiring people and try to bring the best out of them. And that's by trying to learn what their story is and trying to figure out what makes them tick. So everyone has a story. Everyone's fighting a battle you know nothing about. I love it. Okay, what's next?
Number 5 is Sonder. I don't know if either of you are familiar with that philosophy or that concept. It's essentially that we're all, in some cases, nothing more than an extra in the background of someone else's life. So I like to intertwine that with the theory of relativity, and that we're all connected in some, however you choose to believe, some greater scheme or destiny, whatever. But in some way, shape, form, or fashion, we have an impact on people's lives. And that's what I take away from that word and that whole premise. One of my favorite quotes is, and I paraphrase this loosely, but it was either Aristotle or Plato. So it's legit if it comes from back then. And he says, man's greatest significance is that he looks out upon the world, realizes his insignificance, and dares to dream anyway.
Awesome. Sonder, okay. We're nothing more than an extra in someone else's life. That's what you said?
In some cases, maybe a leading role. But yeah, for the most part, we're just these little components in so many people's lives.
And yet the things that we do, the actions that we make, can sort of have a ripple effect into other people's. So we're all absolutely interconnected in this web, and each of us is kind of important. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, awesome. What you got next?
All right, number 6 is be scared. Just do what you're scared of. For some people, it's as simple as a fear of heights. Maybe you go skydiving, or you're scared of public speaking and you go to a Toastmasters class, whatever the case may be. It's like what we talked about earlier. You can never grow if you don't push yourself beyond those boundaries. So I think it's important to be scared.
So be scared, feel the fear, do it anyway.
Yeah.
I'm not jumping out of a plane. I'm going to tell you that right now. I don't even like to take off on planes.
So no smoke jumping for you in the future?
I want to have a smoke jumper on the show. I think that'd be a really good show.
Oh yeah, those guys have sweet gigs. They're pretty cool.
Yeah, and they work their ass off for little to nothing. Nothing. Be scared. All right. Feel the fear. Do it anyway. What are you scared of, Ayla?
Oh, I'm terrified of heights. Wild animals, snakes specifically.
I keep trying to get her to go bear hunting with me, and she's seemed a little reluctant.
I've seen what they can do to people's faces. And
how many faces do you really need?
So, but you just gave the advice that you got to go do it anyway. So I say you grab a bow, go out with Zach. We film it. We put it on the Animal Mind podcast channel. We do a documentary. Be scared. Okay, great. What you got next?
All right, number 7 is volunteer. That's pretty self-explanatory. The best way to learn about yourself is to give to others. I mean, it's such a cool way to connect, whether it's coaching or tutoring or at the fire department, whatever the case may be. I think it really is a catalyst and a paradigm shift in seeing how you and your world is and seeing how others people's world is and being able to give and be a part of it. So.
Sure, and you get to go meet so many people from varying backgrounds and learn their stories and figure out why they're there. It's definitely a different breed of people who go work 40 or more hours a week and then decide to also devote their time to another trade. Yeah, very good. Volunteer.
Number 8, this may come as a surprise, but I believe in getting outside.
No.
There's empirical data that shows just the benefits mentally, physically from being outside, getting out of kind of the blue light of the screens and our phones and just experiencing that open air. So I'm a huge advocate for people getting outside, even if it's just like a local neighborhood park or, if you want to come climb a mountain. I think the benefits are just astounding.
Absolutely. Get away from the screens. Get away from all of that programming. They're trying to program you, Zach.
See, that's what it is.
They're trying to program you. You know about it. You were in cyber warfare.
Well, I was also in human intelligence, and if you think for a minute that I wasn't trying to program people to be where I want them to be, well, you'd be wrong.
I'm pretty sure you've been trying to program me from your Instagram account for the past 4 years.
Well, I don't like to take a lot of credit for your successes, but I am the wind beneath your wings.
So get outside. So get outside and do. Yeah, I like it. All right, what's next?
All right, this one's my favorite. It's simple acts of kindness. And this can come in many forms. It's as simple as greeting someone you're passing or holding the door open for the person behind you, to as extravagant as, some people donate to charity or it goes back to volunteer work, but just taking a moment to just appreciate another human being, show them that you recognize them and that they're important and they're worth it. My favorite gesture, and I get made fun of a little bit for it, but it's really important to me. And it's just, whenever I see someone behind me, I always hold the door open for them. Sure. Like if I see them, it doesn't matter if they're 20 feet or 3 feet behind me, I hold it open for them. And it's just my way of showing that I see you, you're important, and you're valued, like enough for me to stay here and open the door for you.
Absolutely. And that might be the only nice thing that person experiences the entire day. You don't know their story, right?
Exactly.
So I'd like to add on to that. And you mentioned, doing things for strangers. And I think as the world, as a result of maybe social media has a big part in this, we've become disconnected from friends and family. So as connected as we believe we are to them through Facebook and through Instagram and things like that, we think we don't have to reach out to them. Well, people are notoriously only showing you they're putting their best foot forward. They're only putting the best stuff on Facebook, generally speaking. And we forget that there's an imperfect life going on behind that, and some people might be hurting. And the simple acts of kindness need to translate to the people who are in our lives, who we know, who are acquaintances, friends, family, and reaching out to people a little bit more so than just taking a look and being a voyeur into their life and just seeing seeing what they did yesterday and thinking, I hit like, that's good enough, right? Well, we really need to reach out to people because there's so much more going on that they're not posting. And sometimes people are just waiting for somebody to ask. That's for damn sure.
I agree with that.
You're absolutely right.
All right. Simple acts of kindness. Little things to big things. Okay. What's next?
All right. So this last one I'll unveil with a story that's really resonated with me. And I think it ties in very well with what you were just talking about. And essentially it's just this story of a man who wrote ultimately in what was to become his suicide letter that if in his walk to the Golden Gate Bridge, if just one person would acknowledge him or smile, that's what he wrote, then he wouldn't jump. And I think, however true or false or aggrandized, it speaks in volumes of the impact of a small gesture. And like you said, reaching out and checking on someone. So this last one, number 10, is probably the simplest thing you can do, and all it is smile. Sometimes we're great, sometimes we're not. I think in the end, it's like I said earlier, it's all impermeable. Like, it's so transient, however good or bad we feel, like it will come and go. And so appreciate it, take away what we can, and just smile and share that glimpse of humanity with everyone you come across when you can.
Very nice. Smile and smiling, it not only sends waves out into the universe, into mankind when we smile at somebody, like holding the door open, like we said, that might be the only nice thing that happens to them that day. You may be the only person that smiles at another person that day. But smiling also has intrinsic benefits. If you've ever taken a look into the biology of a smile, basically forever and ever, we thought that the brain and the neurons was a one-way system, command system to the muscles in the face, and that when we are happy, we smile. But studies show that when we smile, we also become happy. It's actually a two-way system, that if you are not doing well, if you are not in a mental place that you want to be, if you can actually fake a smile until you feel it for real, the brain will actually react and send out the same happiness chemicals, the dopamine, the serotonin kicks, that will actually make you happy. It's a two-way street. So yeah, smile out there. It brings benefit to mankind, but it also brings intrinsic benefit to yourself. That's awesome. So smile. Good. All right. Well, thank you so much, Ayla. I think this list of 10 items is excellent, and I think that it would benefit anybody if they could, make a checkbox next to any of these items and just go down the list and check it off. And I think that would definitely benefit people's lives. And I look forward to posting it and seeing what people have to say about it, and maybe seeing if people have any extra ways that are good to connect with ourselves and with the world. But Ayla, I thank you so much again for being on the show and dropping some knowledge on us. And you're obviously not just a warrior, an athletic warrior, but just a kind soul. And it was awesome to talk to you and try to get to know you a little bit.
Yeah, thanks for having me.